My name is Courtney Custer. I am an incoming member of the Board of Trustees, among other things. My pronouns are she and her. I am wearing black and gray today with earrings picked out by my darling 10-year-old, which happened to be the earrings I wore to my junior prom. So very fancy this morning. All right, welcome to First Unitarian Church, where our mission is to explore the eternal, nurture community, and pursue the common good. We welcome you in your brokenness and in your wholeness, no matter who you have been, who you are, or who you are becoming. We greet you today with love. I would like to extend a special welcome to everyone who's watching us on YouTube this morning. Please introduce yourself in the comments and indicate where you're joining us from. If Oklahoma City, what neighborhood are you in? If outside Oklahoma City, what city are you in? Throughout the summer, we are featuring guest and lay-led services. Today, our service is led by Reverend Stephen Lee Williams. Reverend Williams he, they, has been serving communities, UU and beyond, through pastoral care, solidarity work, and radical, love-centered organizing since 2013. Before that, he worked in community education in arenas of sexuality, intercultural understanding, and Holocaust awareness. His UU resume includes years of youth ministry and faith formation for all ages. Currently, he has a healthcare job that pays the bills and does part-time pastoral care work for Uplift, trans and non-binary ministries of the UUA. Reverend Stephen's UU values center them in movements for collective liberation, including anti-racism, LGBTQIA liberation, disability justice, youth empowerment, and economic justice. They believe that love at the center necessarily prioritizes people at the margins. Reverend Stephen currently resides in Broken Arrow, Oklahoma, with his spouse Karen and their 2 young adult kids and a trio of pets. Welcome to First Unitarian, Oklahoma City. And now the prelude prepares us for worship. This is not Stephen. Over here, I want to just recognize Barbara McCullough for stepping in as an emergency last-minute accompanist as Stephen was there today. And I will invite Larry Little to light our chalice this morning. We light our chalice in Midtown, Oklahoma City, on land that was home to First Americans, including the Apache, Caddo, and Wichita, on land that was taken from Muskogee and Seminole and other removed and relocated people. We light the chalice as a symbol of our sacred time together. The burning chalice represents the light of reason and science, the warmth of loving community, the cleansing heat of justice, and the flame of hope.
My heart is moved by all I cannot save. So much has been destroyed. I have to cast my lot with those who, age after age, perseveringly, perversely, with no extraordinary power, reconstitute the world. Adrian Rich.
I'm Tom Balcom. I'll be your song leader this morning, and we're going to sing the first hymn out of the gray hymnal, Gather the Spirit. It's number 347 in the gray hymnal. Please stand and rise if you are able.
Please be seated. Earlier this year, in February, I went to the Friends of the Library book sale at the fairgrounds. If you aren't familiar, this is a gigantic book sale that happens once a year to raise money for the library. Thousands of books are for sale. Some are retired library books, others are donated books. I browsed around for quite some time, not really looking for anything in particular. I picked up a book about the Olympics, a John Grisham thriller, and an interesting looking book with a shack on the cover sitting against a gray sky. That book was described on the back cover as a passionate and personal analysis of a culture in crisis, that of poor white Americans. Well, that might be an interesting read, I thought. I'd read Killers of the Flower Moon about the plight of the Osage. I read Caste, which draws comparisons between slavery in America, the Jews under Hitler, the caste system in India. I read a book about Japanese internment camps in America during World War II, but I couldn't really think of a book I'd read about poor white Americans. So I slipped it into my bag and I kept shopping. I added a few others to my stash, a leadership book, a true crime book, a book about the influenza pandemic of 1919. I checked out. I paid $20 for maybe a dozen books. The book with the shack on the cover, though, was especially interesting to me. It was a memoir, and right off the bat, the author said, "I'll be the first to admit I've accomplished nothing great in my life. Certainly nothing that would justify a complete stranger paying money to read about it. Rather," he tells us, "my primary aim is to tell a true story about what a problem feels like when you're born with it hanging around your neck." He goes on to describe a childhood of chaos. He had a revolving door of father figures, a mother that struggled with addiction that put her into rehab more than once. He talks about a culture of violence and hillbilly justice. For example, his grandmother, when she was 12, caught a pair of men trying to steal the family's cow. She fetched her rifle. She shot one man in the leg. The other one made a getaway. Unafraid, she came closer, prepared to kill the wounded man, stopped by her sibling. That same sibling, by the way, was no stranger to violence. Later, as an adult, that sibling, dishonored in an encounter with another adult, dragged a delivery driver out of his truck, beat him unconscious, ran an electric saw up and down his body, nearly killing him. Those were the kinds of family stories that were shared with pride as instructive tales of a good life. You might assume that this author was doomed. These kinds of formative experiences could have no happy ending. How do you gain resiliency in life when everyone around you in your Rust Belt town feels like life is something that happens to you and the only way to cope is with violence or drugs? You need help. Some of this help came from within the author's own family, inexplicably his sharpshooting grandmother, but some of it came from outside. How else could a hillbilly navigate Yale Law School, where this author, nearly a high school dropout, ended up after graduating Ohio State? Have you guessed by now that the book I'm talking about is Hillbilly Elegy by J.D. Vance, the current nominee for vice president on the Republican ticket? By no means am I endorsing Vance as a candidate for office. Again, for those in the back, I am not endorsing a candidate for office, especially not this one. Politics are really not the point of this book. The book was published before the author ever became a politician. But what was really striking to me as I read the book was how impactful little bits of help were to him as he went through life. Things that other people take for granted were the magical keys that unlocked doors for Vance. As he puts it, it was people who instinctively understood the questions I didn't even know to ask. His new community at Yale taught him things that he didn't learn growing up, things his family could not have taught him. These were the things that he didn't know that he didn't know. For example, he made a panicked call from a restaurant bathroom to one of his new friends at Yale to ask how to navigate all the silverware on the table at an interview event at a restaurant. Or Vance's revelation that finance was an industry that people worked in, which he did go on to work in. So I thought about the times in my life when somebody helped me when I didn't know I needed it. When someone told me at my first real job, invest 10% of your salary in retirement and don't look back. When someone told me a couple of years later, don't put that money in government bonds, invest it in the market, those little bits of unsolicited advice that I didn't know I needed made hundreds of thousands of dollars of difference in my life. Someone whispered to me that we should refinance our house when interest rates were low. That had not even remotely occurred to me. And yet, by following that advice, we cut 7 years off our mortgage with barely changing our monthly payment. So then I wonder, how can I help? I work in human resources for the federal government, so I decided I was best suited at church to join the Human Resources Working Group. Some of my contributions to that committee are nothing more than any other thoughtful and diligent congregant might make. But occasionally, some of that knowledge that I take for granted in my professional life is that little bit of you don't know what you don't know for the committee. For example, as a federal employee in HR, I'm required every year, for 20 years, every year to take training on the Uniformed Services Employment and Reemployment Rights Act, or USERRA. Normally, this information about the rights of military members and their employer is tucked away, unused in my non-work life. But that part of my brain lit up when one of 1UC's employees enlisted in the National Guard, and I was able to share with the church our obligations under the law. I'm not suggesting that we go around offering unsolicited advice to people all day. In fact, when I read this reflection to my teenager, he wanted me to very much emphasize that point. In fact, given the wrong way or at the wrong time, unsolicited advice can not only be unhelpful, but can be met with hostility. But in the right circumstance, it can be life-changing. We all hold magic keys, whether it's a little bit of knowledge, a bit of empathy, or a bit of experience to share. And I encourage you to see what you can unlock for somebody else. And now, in the vein of helping others, we will transition to the offering. Every Sunday, we take an offering. Since 2002, all cash and designated checks from that offering have gone directly to external nonprofit organizations doing good work, our Change for Change partners. For the month of July, our Change for Change partner is Pet Food Pantry of Oklahoma. For animal lovers, it's hard to imagine not having enough money to care for your beloved pets. But can you imagine having to choose between feeding yourself and feeding your pet? For some, pets are their only family or friends. The human-animal bond can be vital to a person's well-being, offering companionship, unconditional love, joy, comfort, friendship, acceptance, all without judgment. No one should face the decision of giving up their pets just because they have no resources for pet food. Most likely, these people are sharing their food with their pets, feeding their animals before feeding themselves. Their purpose is, because of you, no one will go hungry. No one will have to give up their pet. Fewer animals will end up in rescues, shelters, and on the streets. The pet's person won't have to give up their own food to feed their pet. So for those of you who are in the sanctuary with us today, in just a moment, the members of the HR working group will be passing the offering plate. And if you're watching us online, please make your gift by sending a check to First Unitarian. Just write Change for Change in the memo line or make an online payment through the website oneuc.org. this time, I would like to share a reading provided by Reverend Stephen from a piece called Mutual Aid by Dean Spade. Mutual aid is collective coordination to meet each other's needs, usually from an awareness that systems we have in place are not going to meet them. Those systems, in fact, have often created the crisis or are making things worse. We see examples of mutual aid in every single social movement, whether it's people raising money for workers on strike, setting up a ride-sharing system during the Montgomery bus boycott, putting drinking water in the desert for migrants crossing the border, training each other in emergency medicine because ambulance response time in poor neighborhoods is too slow, raising money to pay for abortions for those who can't afford them, or coordinating letter writing to prisoners. These are mutual aid projects. They directly meet people's survival needs and are based on a shared understanding that the conditions in which we are made to live in are unjust. There's nothing new about mutual aid. People have worked together to survive for all of human history. But capitalism and colonialism created structures that have disrupted how people have historically connected with each other and shared everything they needed to survive. As people were forced into systems of wage labor and private property, and wealth became increasingly concentrated, our ways of caring for each other have become more and more tenuous. Today, many of us live in the most atomized societies in human history, which makes our lives less secure and undermines our ability to organize together to change unjust conditions on a large scale. We are put in competition with each other for survival, and we are forced to rely on hostile systems like healthcare systems designed around profit, not keeping people healthy, or food and transportation systems that pollute the earth and poison people for things that we need. More and more people report that they have no one they can confide in when they're in trouble. That means many of us do not get the help, mental health, drug use, family violence, or abuse help until the police or the courts are involved, which tends to escalate rather than resolve harm. In this context of social isolation and forced dependency on hostile systems, mutual aid, where we choose to help each other out, share things, and put time and resources in caring for the most vulnerable, is a radical act.
And now we have our women's group that will be singing our anthem, The Silence in the Song by Mark Patterson.
Leave the mic. Pretty good at parallel parking. Will you join me in a spirit of meditation, please? I invite you to get comfortable in your body, whatever that looks like for you, whether you need to get still or shake things out. And let the old air out of your body. And take a deep breath in. And out. In. And out. And as you return to your normal breathing pattern, let a calmness spread from your head down over your eyebrows, your nose, your lips, your neck, your shoulders, your chest, your hips, your lap, your legs, your feet, your seat, and continue to breathe, finding a stillness in our bodies can help us find a stillness in our spirits and our minds in the midst of a busy and chaotic world. Sometimes we need to re-regulate. Sometimes it helps me to focus on where I am in space and time. To orient myself to the space around me. Open my eyes. See, if I can, 3 things that are around me. Notice, if I can, 3 sounds that are around me. Feel, if I can, 3 sensations in my body. Air on my skin. Seat under me. Floor under my feet. Getting grounded is a necessary thing in this world. And I invite you to do this anytime you need it. Let us be in silence for a moment. Bless the Spirit within.
Okay, we're going to now sing out of the Gray Hymnal, hymn 391, which is Voice Still and Small, words and music by John Corrado. And please stand and rise as you are able.
That one always brings me to center. That was the meditation response at my home congregation in New Orleans when I lived there. And it always just brings me home. There's a little bit of a homecoming to this church as well. I used to come to rallies here when I was a youth. I actually have on the back of this stole a decal from one of the shirts that I had from a rally, OKC 2001, the Tippity Tappin' Happenin' Rappin' Rally. So OKC has a special place in my heart. Spent a lot of time in that courtyard and on those steps chatting way into the night. But that was a long time ago, and the last several years have been pretty different. Last several years of pandemic and social polarization have exposed some frayed places and holes in the fabric of church business as usual. This has been true across congregations and faith traditions. A lot of congregations have had to learn how to do church in new ways because the old ones haven't fit in a rapidly shifting world. In the early COVID years, lay leaders and ministers alike burned out under the pressure to be all things to all people, become public health experts overnight. Child and youth attendance shrank dramatically across the board as parents made decisions to protect their families that meant sacrificing community. And youth got zoomed out from doing everything online. The most resilient congregations have been those who have managed to pool their resources, think outside the old boxes of hierarchy and routine, and make a new way forward based on the emergent needs of their members and communities. Easy, right? I mean, all you have to do is deconstruct everything you know about how committees run and examine your congregation's historical relationship with power and learn how to see conflict as a tool for growth rather than a monster to be locked in the broom closet. But that's about 3 other sermons and an interim ministry's worth of work. And I am not your interim minister, just your guest preacher. here to offer you one framework for approaching this new way of being. So our first truth was the problem. The last few years have been really hard for churches and their leaders, and the old ways aren't working anymore, and we're just tenuously getting a grip on something new. I noticed two other truisms emerging for congregations. They grow stronger in their relationships with the wider world. No one is coming to save us but us. And together, we have everything we need. The latter keeps the former from becoming a closed door, an us against the world mentality. Together implies with each other. As our UCC cousins say, every single other. We share our ministry with each other in this building, with UUs down the turnpike and in surrounding states, with the whole of UUism in our interconnectedness centered in love. And from that grounded place, I hope, we also share it locally with the people down the street, on the street, in the streets. Mutual aid is a model of collectivism that can inform shared ministry beyond the capitalistic, individualistic limitations of our ingrained cultural ideas. When everyone offers up help according to their ability, everyone receives according to their need. The whole benefits. When we learn to do this in our immediate community, it becomes easier to imagine a world where such a way of life is possible. I've often heard mutual aid described as a group of people who pass around the same $20 to keep each other getting by. It's more like $40 these days. And it is, but it's much more than that. Mutual aid societies in the US go back at least as far as associations of freed enslaved people, pooling money to buy each other's freedom, or pay for travel and housing, sharing clothing, food, and housewares to make sure everyone had enough. Those societies were made illegal back then, so threatening were they to the white establishment. There are some recent cases of persecution of mutual aid societies too. Not only the Black Panthers and the Young Lords in the 1970s, who did things like create free breakfast programs and medical screenings for their communities, but currently, grassroots power is a threat to systems of supremacy. What all of these societies have in common, the Freedmen's Societies, the Black Panthers, organizations like the Red Dirt Collective here in OKC and the Tulsa Intersectional Care Network up in my neck of the woods, are pooling of resources, usually among poor and marginalized people, to better each other's lives. That may be money, food, clothing, medical supplies, housework, childcare, car repairs, paperwork, sharing knowledge, education, health practices, just about anything you can think of. I've benefited from and contributed to mutual aid all throughout my life. It's how I survived sometimes, often. I know a church in New Orleans that practiced it well, that home congregation I mentioned earlier. First UU, my heart home, and sponsoring congregation for ministry. We met in my mid-20s when I returned to the city a couple years after Katrina. And they were rebuilding the church literally from the inside out with their own hands. Congregants installed new drywall, lighting, linoleum, and more. Painted walls, mucked out the courtyard. One, a stonemason, even laid a labyrinth into the floor of the sanctuary. All of us who could got our hands dirty. Those who couldn't made food, helped with services, watched children, involved the children in small projects. As a youth advisor, I coordinated the youth group in cleaning the upstairs where the Center for Ethical Living and Social Justice Renewal was being housed. It became a visitors' learning center with handmade bunk beds, courtesy of some handy members, and a small but functional kitchen to feed volunteers, led by the loving diva chef Jafia, disabled teller of stories and teacher of little hands in the ways of kitchen witchery. Many hands made light work, and many lessons were learned in those halls, at that stove, around those tables. Everyone played a part, young and old, abled and disabled, wealthy and poor, all colors and genders. It was a beautiful time. And that spirit continued and continues in that congregation to this day. It's still a beautiful congregation, though they have recently said goodbye to their beautiful building. Like many smaller congregations, those early COVID years exposed what was already inevitable. They simply couldn't sustain the budget to maintain the overhead. So they made the loving decision to sell so they could keep their congregation going, and had a loving ceremony to thank the building for its service. They're now renting space in a Methodist church nearby. The church remains intact in the congregation. I still get the newsletter. The beloved building has new life with its new owners. Mutual aid sometimes means passing things on when you can no longer use them. I believe in this model because I have seen it work, and because it has saved lives, including my own, again and again and again. It prevents burnout, encourages rest and restoration, brings out the best in people, nurtures their gifts, creates villages in which to raise children, and care for sick and disabled and elders while they remain involved in the community. Mutual aid creates bonds that last lifetimes and outlast buildings and transcend distances, changes lives, changes faiths, changes worlds. Is your church like that? Could it be even more so? I can't tell you what to do to make that happen for your church or to make it more so, because every congregation is different. So I'll leave you with this. What love could you spill into the world around you if you started right here with each other?
Okay, our closing hymn is number 346 in the gray hymnal. Come Sing a Song with Me, words and music by Carolyn McDade. Please rise and stand as you are able.
And I'll bring you hope when hope winter time. Come walk in rain with me. Come walk in rain with me. Come walk in rain with me, that I might know your mind. And I'll bring you hope when hope is hard to find. And I'll bring a song of love and a rose in the winter time. Come share a rose with me. Come share a rose with me. Come share a rose with me, that I might know your mind. And I'll bring you hope when hope is hard to find. And I'll bring a song of love and a rose in the winter time.
I'll invite Larry to extinguish our chalice. We extinguish our chalice flame, but not the light of love and community which burns in our hearts.
Go forth and spill forth the love in your hearts with each other and with the world. Be blessed and be a blessing. Amen.